I'm not going to go through the whole character creation cycle, but you can see there's a tremendous amount. You have all the different attributes and how each one affects it. Then we spell out how you can see how it'll update down below, critical hit bonus, and whether it'll, as it affects your chances to evade, that sort of thing. So it really breaks it down for you to help you customize your characters. And then you have all the different skills. And each one of these skills, they get used through the game extensively. And we have to make a real point that if you decide to put a lot of your points into anything from lock picking to weaponsmithing to toaster repair, that it has to pay off all the way to the end of the game. It can't be that you put all your points into something only to find out, oh, it didn't even matter, I shouldn't have wasted my time. So we make pass after pass after pass looking at the game for each one of the skill types to make sure it's incorporated. So like I said, I won't go through the whole process here. You could spend hours just with this. I'm gonna take some pre-existing characters that come with the game. You start off with 4 desert rangers, and then you have 3 empty slots for which NPCs can join your party. So I'm gonna go ahead and just jump in here to the game. Now, oops, there's an issue that it's gonna show that, let's make sure that the movie again, and I can't skip it, so that's okay because I'm gonna talk during it anyway, so just pretend it's not up there. So with these games, it's the choice and consequence that makes them really great, and it's the sheer amount of choice and consequence. So we put so much in this game that the average person won't see on one pass through. There's probably a good 30% of the content that you just won't see, but that comes with the territory. If I'm making a truly kind of a sandbox type game, and when it's sandbox, most sandbox games are driven either by like Grand Theft Auto, you can get tattoos or pump weights or do all these different things, but the narrative structure for the most part is the same no matter what. This is a narrative sandbox, so we're constantly changing the way things roll out based upon what you do, and that can only be done by hand. And it also, that's why when I say there's like 30% of the content that you're not going to see, that also comes with the territory, right? Because otherwise, it's not real choice. Otherwise, you're just coming to the same place every single time. By creating a bunch of things you won't see, then you're knocking down walls and doors, and it's like, lo and behold, it gets paid off. And I think that's what makes a good role-playing game, right? Which is where you try something your way, and it works. And then you try something again, and it works, and something again, and it works. And when you do that 3 or 4 times, man, you are immersed. That's when the game is great. And the opposite is true too. If every time I try something I hit a wall, the world starts to fall apart a little bit. So we have to make a real dedication to that purpose of creating. So that's why when it is so many words, and there is so much that the average person is not going to see. And I had someone in my office recently, who was a famous game designer. He says, this is crazy. Why would you bother to create all this content people aren't going to see? You know, it just doesn't make sense. But again, that's what you have to do in order to make it feel that way, and that's the promise. And we take that concept to the next level, which is to even towards the way the game can end, right? Because if you're really committed to the world reacting the way it's supposed to, well, you know, in a lot of games, you get to the end and there's like 3 different endings, right? Well, life doesn't work that way, right? If you in your life decide to go knock a liquor store off or do something or get married or move to another country, chances are you're not going to be the exact same moment of your life and that it's going to have 3 options. It'll go vastly different ways. So we do the same thing with this, which is kind of cool, which is, for example, you're supposed to be good guys. You're the Desert Rangers. They're sending you out on patrol and helping people. If you start killing all the innocent people all the time, and he's telling you, hey, we're getting bad reports in you guys, you better stop. At some point, you become enemies of the Desert Rangers. You now know, the game is now changed. You now can no longer go to Los Angeles, which is like the second half of the game. It's sort of like you now have a new game, which is kill or be killed by the Desert Rangers. And you can take that to its ultimate conclusion, which is A, either that you die, of course, or B, you can actually grind out and overthrow the Desert Ranger Citadel and win the game. so to speak. It's not a very heroic ending, but you win. You slaughter them. You get a whole epilogue of what it did to the environment, and the credits roll, and you won. Congratulations, because that was the rabbit hole that you decided to go down into. And we do the same thing elsewhere in the game. There's a wonderful ending in LA that's not the final ending that the writers would love for you to see, but a different one that's super dark and twisted, and you just have to feel like crap doing it, but you can do it, and then the payoff for that is perfect, right? And it's just, I love that stuff. I love the rabbit hole of letting people chase it all the way down. So anyway, so that kind of goes sort of with the, kind of the sense of what we're trying to put together here. So let me get this. So you're starting right off at the funeral scene that you just saw. We can ask about Ace.
Ace had been trying to locate a faint radio signal, which has lately been giving us cause for concern. We gave him 3 repeater units and sent him to hook him up to 3 remote radio towers. And this would have allowed us to get a fix on the signal. But sadly, Ace was murdered by unknown
That's good.
right after hooking up the first tower. In his logbook, the last 2 repeater units were stolen.
So we could sit here and ask him about a tremendous amount of different detail about the Desert Rangers and the world and the mission, or you could say, goodbye.
Are you walking away from me, recruits? I'm not done talking. Stop right there and listen up.
So we're going to just ask about the area.
It's about a day's walk east from here. I'll mark it on your map.
So there's the map of the Southwest you'll be exploring, and then there's the radio tower. And you can explore this map in pretty much any order you want. Which our players love to do. There's one area, because of radiation, you have to get some suits, but for the most part, 80% of it, you can go wherever you want. So he says, okay, I'm marking a map, off you go. So we're going to say goodbye.
Good luck out there, recruits.
So the game has started. There's a shovel on the ground. We can go and pick that up, and that does come in handy. Yeah, but we know players, they're going to want to, they're dark. They're going to say, hey, what if I use the shovel on the grave that they just buried Ace in? He says, hey, what the hell you think you're doing? That's consecrated ground. Now, I could try it again. He says, last warning, do not touch that grave again. Now, I'm not going to do it, but if I were to do it a 3rd time, and it's not like you've been warned, the 2 Rangers that are burying him, they pop up, Vargas pulls out his gun, and you're now in a firefight with like level 25, 30 guys versus your level 1 guys. You last about 1 second. You get obliterated, and you're dead. So we have no problem killing the player in the first 3 minutes of gameplay if they want to do something foolish like that. So like I said, we're going to just ignore that. And we're going to move on over here. This guy here says, hey, I can't open this door for you quite yet. We can talk to him. So this guy gives you a friendly salute. Welcome to the Citadel. The general ordered me not to let you in. Now you'll notice I have these options down here. These are part of our conversational skills. We have a smart ass, and we have a hard ass, which is like intimidation and then being kind of trying to be funny. One of my characters, Slick, if you'll notice, has the smart ass skill, level 1. So I'm going to use the smart ass skill on him. He says, yeah, nice try, but I kind of like your attitude. He says, and I got something if you're interested in it. And I could say, move away from the door, whether you like it or not. That doesn't end well. So I'm going to say, no, I'm interested. He says, I have a thing called the Mississippi Mule. Are you interested? You promise to keep it and put it to good use. You say, I promise. And there, now you've got a weapon you would have never had otherwise. So that's just sort of a small little area where you can see if you had a ranger and you had that particular skill or those 2 skills, you could get something.
Ich habe jetzt hier Brian Fargo. Wir sind hier, um mit ihm unter anderem über Wasteland 2 zu reden, aber auch über Kickstarter und seine Pläne für die Zukunft generell. So, thanks for taking the time.
No, my pleasure.
And it's coming out at the end of August. This is the last stretch, and you've got a lot of feedback. A lot has changed over the beta. How many of the changes were actually planned, and how many of the changes did you actually do for the feedback?
That's a good question. I'd probably say about 80% were planned, or maybe 75, and 25% was based upon people playing the game and watching their reactions. And again, a lot of the times it was just them reminding us of things, of commitments we've made and the way they thought the product should flow, and we'd say, yeah, they're right, So it's great. It's one of the best entertainment comes from an environment internally where people can be honest with each other, right? Have a lot of candor internally, right? Where you say, I like that, I don't like that, right? Oh, I don't know if that's going to work. They're not going to like that. So, but now we've taken it to the level where the people outside the company, they have no problem being honest, none whatsoever. And so you're able to get a dialogue that forces issues to the surface. So I think it's super healthy for making something. And by the way, we're probably going to be about 2 weeks late on the end of August. So just to be clear on that, we're right to the end point, but we have some physical goods we need to get out at the same time. But we're basically done. We're sort of in the last month here.
Okay. Have you ever had a game where you had such a huge base of people helping out during the beta with Steam Early Access and the Kickstarter?
Never. No, this is a first for me. When one of the questions I get asked a lot is like, what's the biggest difference between making Fallout games versus this game? And I say there's two parts. One is the audience, doing it in an open participation this way, where you're putting stuff out that's not done yet, just to see the commentary, right? That's kind of alien, but I love it. But you really got to change your DNA to do it. And the second part is just the tools. Our ability to iterate is so much faster than before. If I had to change the UI in Fallout, it might have taken me a week or two. This we can have it done by lunchtime. I mean, it really it's an order of magnitude faster. So that's been great for allowing us to make a lot of changes. We just did the latest update just in the last couple of days, and the last one was about 2 months ago. I think the update list was 50 pages of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, it was incredible. Yeah.
And still, all those changes, the lot of work that went into, you showed us in the presentation how many different ways you can go. Still, you have been working on a tight budget with the Kickstarter and the additional money. Many games are made with much more money. Mm-hmm. And how do you work that? How do you cut costs?
Well, we don't have a lot of management infrastructure. Like everybody's like a doer pretty much, and when you teach people how to think, right, once you really nail down the sensibilities and the parameters for what needs to be done, these things have this explosion where everybody's just firing on all cylinders. And like this game right now is so big that there's no one person in my office that knows everything that's in it. It's impossible because each person's doing their thing. And so part of it is that part of it, and having that kind of right atmosphere and environment. And there's no, I'm not trying to manage every detail. If everything was going through me, no, it would be completely impossible. And then we also have the advantage that we're not trying to record audio for every line. Otherwise, that would be a budgetary issue. It'd also be a time issue, locking down audio, because we'll be changing text all the way to the last second. And that allows us to make a world that's more immersive, but if we had audio, we wouldn't have those options. So there's just a lot of different using off-the-shelf tools like Unity, taking assets off the Unity store and then changing it so they're not recognizable. We got fans to help us do the assets. We had fans help us localize it. We've had fans help us by default bug test it, right? Because it's been in beta access to help us with all the compatibility testing. So the interaction with the audience is also. I mean, this project is probably going to be about a $5 million production, but it would have cost 10 plus under using traditional means.
So you're kind of working, I think it's kind of a little bit like back in the 90s with smaller studios, and also I kind of get the feeling that personality is getting back into game design via Kickstarter.
Yes,
so
sure.
It's important that it's a Brian Fargo game, and it's important that other kind of icons of the games industry are coming back. Do you think that's going on in the future, that it's more personalized?
What's great is that, I think about, it took me a long time to get used to is that, because it used to be when I was if I was doing projects for other publishers, you'd spend a third of your time trying to get paid, and then you try another third of your time trying to set the next project up so all your people had jobs, right? So there was 2/3 to 75% of your time gone, right? And a very little bit of time to focus on the project. But now I will come in and just talk about the game all day. Talk about the AI, talk about the music, talk about some design philosophy or whatever, people sharing their stuff off. And I used to go home and go, oh my God, I didn't get anything done today. I didn't work. But you forget, that is my job, right? And so creativity, doesn't just happen at a forced pace. It has to come to you. So as I'm able to gestate and think about it, I can come up with really fun and clever ideas. Like the kids choir, like that was all mine. I love that part of it. And then I even have my grandfather was a real fire and brimstone preacher from the 40s in real life, right? And he was kind of famous. He'd travel around and do these tent revivals, and to the point he made an album, right? Well, he died at a very young age because he was just over the top, right? Well, I never met him, but he did have the album. So my mom had that album, so I took the album and I pulled the soundtrack of him doing one of his sermons, and it's in the game in one of the Mark Morgan soundtracks, right? I love that stuff, right? And you only get to come up with that stuff if you're in the zone of creation. If I was running around trying to do business stuff, I just wouldn't think that way. So yeah, it's beautiful that it's all because of the fans, because they have given us the money up front and saying we trust you, and that has made the dynamic so much better to do something creative and, as you say, a little more personal.
Yeah, and in one other interview you said that it's proven now that Kickstarter does work, and also because things get not funded, because you can see people are maybe fed up with something, but you can see what they want.
Right. No, I mean, there's been friends of mine have done some Kickstarters that didn't work, and they were all depressed. I said, nah, don't take it personal. Maybe it was just doing its job. Maybe they were telling you they didn't want that. Hey, if I had gone out and instead of asking for Wasteland 2 and said I want to do an Angry Birds derivative on mobile, how well would I have done, right? I mean, not at all. I mean, it has to be coupled with the person's talents, history, and then the right kind of product concept too. So yeah, because crowdfunding goes beyond the money. It helps you vet the idea, and it also helps you communicate the idea. And I think, Divinity Sin, I think, is a good example of that, because my sense is, they were pretty well into development. They were already 3 years into development when they went to Kickstarter. So maybe they would have made it without it, right? Not sure. I don't know all the details. But no matter what, it's doing great. And I think that it became a promotional vehicle for them, because like if my 60,000 people love what I'm doing, right, and I delivered, I mean, anybody who paid us $15, deal of the century, right? So you get this game, 60 hours, 70 hours, $15, and you're loving it, right? You're going to tell other people. And that's the most valuable thing on the planet, especially in this day and age where virality is everything. I think people are fairly cynical and immune to advertising these days. It's like I have to see an ad like 100 times before I even notice it anymore. So, but the power of people saying, yeah, these people deliver, they did a great job, it's priceless.
So in all the huge amount of feedback, and we also talked about how to cut costs, what is the essence? What do you say? It wouldn't be a Wasteland game without that.
Oh, I think it wouldn't be a Wasteland game without the humor. I think that's that in the 80s. That's kind of our thing. We even though, like, this is it's over 100 years after the bombs have dropped in the Wasteland world. The first one was as was this one. But pop culture-wise, it's locked in the 80s, right? The bombs drew this. Nobody. So whether it's mesh shirts or the Pet Rock or Culture Club, the Pink Mohawks, that kind of stuff, we've still kind of locked in. I think that's what makes Wasteland. That and the Southwest. I think those two things kind of mix together.
Okay, I'd also like to talk a little bit about the future. You said you've always have to look for the next project, keep the people employed that you got for this one. So like you've got Torment that we know about. Are you rolling out other things?
Well, that's what Torment, that Kickstarter provided, because I didn't want to be in that mode of, oh my gosh, what's next, right? I wanted the pre-production done, and hey, when we went out with, people said I was crazy to do another Kickstarter while the first one wasn't even done yet, and it was sort of controversial at the time, but I laid out my reasoning why, right? And I remember the video with the kid. He's like, don't you just fire them when they're done, right? And well, we don't want to just fire them when we're done, and you can't afford for everyone to sit around for 6 or 7 months waiting to see what you're going to do, right? So that's why I pitched Torment, and of course it got financed. So once this, already people have been going on to Torment. The artists are already on it. So the people will come off of this. We'll leave a few on support, We still have the mod tools to do, and then the rest go on to Torment, and then we start thinking about the next thing, right? But Torment allows us that nice transition period, and then of course, we don't project any big sales for Wasteland 2. We don't dare to get too optimistic. But if we have a reasonable success, which we hope we will, then that takes pressure off, and primarily if we have a big success, that means I can do this kind of game for like another decade or two.
I was also very curious about Torment. Why Torment? Of course, Wasteland has been your baby for a long time. It's your game.
Right.
But neither Torment has really a close connection, and also the Numenera game that wasn't even out, the pen and paper game at the time.
Well, Colin McComb was already working with Wasteland 2 with me, right? So, and Colin and Chris were, two of the primary guys, as was Monty Cook, who invented Planescape, right? So, Colin and I were talking one time, and he says, we should revisit Torment, and I liked Torment because it's so unlike the other role-playing games. Like, if you're just outside looking in, you can go, oh, they're all role-playing games, and kind of wave your hand. But that the Torment's a very different kind of personal experience. You use words as weapons, basically. It's just a completely different kind of experience. So Colin said that he wanted to do something there again, and of course, being a fan of the series, and you're right. So I wasn't I didn't personally design any part of the first Torment, but I was the executive producer, and I signed off on everything, went through the vision documents, and picked and chose, of the thousands of things, which ones am I going to do. So there was always something about it, and then of course we started talking about Monty. Right, doing Numenera, okay, wait a second, if I can get you and Monty, we can put this whole thing together, then now I want to do it. So when I knew I could put the team, right, it wasn't just let's do Torment, it was having the right team, then it became very interesting to me. Now, of course, we tried to get Chris Avallone involved, and he was like, well, I'm not sure, hemming and hawing, wasn't sure, and they're keeping him busy at Obsidian, and he'd already done some work with Wasteland, and so we launched. We didn't know he was going to be involved, right? People thought we held that back. We did not hold that back. That came, so finally the thing launches, and we did like $7 million or $1 million in 7 hours. So I called him up. I said, look, this thing's being made with or without you now. Come on. And then finally they said, okay, we'll do it, right? So that's how. So then that was boom. Then we had pretty much the whole team.
Okay, so as long as Kickstarter keeps rolling, as long as this keeps working out for you, we can expect more really unique games coming out of In Exile.
Completely. That's the position this puts me into. One of the things that I love is people go, well, what's next? And I'll go, well, let me tell you what's not next. I said, I don't have to get a Wasteland 3 out by my next fiscal year, where it's like, okay, guys, everything's in, because it makes perfect business sense to say, we've already got everything into place, all the assets in place. I could definitely roll a sequel out in 12 months, easy, and it would be good. Fallout 2 was the same way, but we don't have to do that. We get to let's sit back, let's gestate, let's make sure it's right, let's see which ideas strike us. I don't have to rush into production on something, and that's what all this affords us. There's a shopkeep here. There's a can on the ground. This guy over here says, hey, you mind picking up that can for me? I say, yeah, sure, I'll pick up the can. Of course, he did it just to set you up so the goat would hit you in the butt. So now this is a little it's like a throwaway scene, right? But you have options here. You could shoot the goat right now. I could pull out my guns, in which case the guy's like, you shot our goat, You could turn around and shoot the guy who told you to do the thing with the goat. Or, of course, you could walk off. Or if you had Animal Whisper, you could charm that goat, and that goat would then follow you throughout the game. So just little sequences like that. Oops, let me get over here. Now, and by the way, let me scroll out. He said just head into the desert. That's the desert icon. Most people are going to walk right off and go, boom, leave the map. But if you do a little bit of exploring, you'll find over in this corner, Angela.
God damn it, Ace. You never should have put down the wrench and picked up the gun. Sorry about the waterworks. I'm still pretty broke up over Ace. I'm Angie. You kids must be the new recruits old Vargas trained out. Lord, y'all just babies.
Now, and she's a character from the first Wasteland. Now, you do not need to have played Wasteland 1 to have played this game at all. But if you did, it's chock. We have running gags from 20 years ago, jokes, characters from it, references. There's tons of stuff. If you didn't, it makes it a fuller, more richer world. You don't have to have done it. She was a character from the first game. Now, and we could sit there for 10 or 15 minutes asking about what happened to all the characters, what's going on. You go, this whole game you can dive as deep as you want. There are diaries, hundreds of pages of diaries you can read in the game. Anyway, but I'm going to just say goodbye for purposes of this.
Listen, I know the waste is like the back of my hand.
So this is your first chance to get an NPC to join your party. And of course, we're going to say yes. So she gives you a little hint there. She says, don't tell Vargas why I'm with you, because he doesn't want me to go. Now, if the player walks back to Vargas, he's going to go, hey, Angie, what are you doing with them? Well, two options there. You could say, no, she's just showing us around, in which case he says, carry on. Or if you're stupid enough and say, oh, she's helping us get his murderer, he says, that's it, Angie, out of there, and he pulls her out of the party, right? The world's always reacting to what you're doing. So now we're going to head to the world map. So this is the main map here.
Ranger Team Echo, this is Ranger Command. Come in. Roger, Echo 1. Just making sure your radio is working. I'll be your dispatcher from...
So he just gives you more information about the radio. He'll be dispatching. He's your constant contact with the Ranger Central.
10-4, Echo 1. Carry on. Ranger Command out.
And so like I said, here, this is the map. You can see us traveling across it, telling us to head to the radio tower. Things are gated by, one, you have to keep an eye on your water supply. There's also random enemies. The first ones are pretty easy to get away from, but as you get further out from the main area, it's not so easy. So in this case, I'm going to just run from the encounter. You see there's some radiation zones that came up. There's a little oasis there. We can fill up our canteen. Like I said, and everything's being reflecting on the map as it changes. So you get to fully explore this area. This is the southwest. So what I want to do now is jump to a more complex scene. I like this scene because it shows how the game can be like one scene can be 10 minutes or 2 hours, and it shows you kind of the spider web of all the different ways it can go off. That's the tricky part, because like I say, if you play this the first time through, you're thinking, well, how much will I have noticed if I'm only playing it one time, and is it worth it? But intellectually, you will understand it, because you'll see things that'll happen, and you'll think, well, what if I hadn't done that? Or what if I hadn't saved that guy? Or what if that person wasn't in my party? I wouldn't have seen that scene. So you'll, the whole time, know that even though you don't need to play it twice to appreciate it, that the things are changing, you're seeing events you wouldn't have otherwise. So this is the Servants of the Mushroom Cloud. They're a group that's dedicated to basically the bomb going off, and they've developed a religion about how wonderful it was that man's been annihilated with the nuclear weapons. So they said, hey, where's Brother Shapiro? How could you lose our best canyon guide? He says, I hope you at least have the tribute you were told to collect. I say, tribute? Yeah, do you have what was asked of you? If you came up short, you might find yourself in big trouble. Well, so like I said, we have this kind of nuclear sludge that they're looking for. I could give it to them, and they would open up the gate in the north, and we'd go right past, and we'd be good to go. I could say I'm a little bit short, or I could say, no, you're in trouble, motherfucker. And so, of course, that's always the more fun route to take, and so we're going to do that. And of course, he's a little incredulous, saying, you'd rather face our wrath than pay a measly tribute? And of course, you're saying, yes, bring it on, right? So in we go. So now we're in combat. And, again, we could spend time on it's a very tactical combat. You've got height advantage, you've got cover, you've got crouching into positions, you can craft weapons and put scopes on them. There's all sorts of things improving your stats to give you more action points. So tremendous amount of detail here, but for purposes of this, I'm not going to dive into that. I'm going to start shooting people. All right, took a shot, got another one up. Let's him take a shot too. Oh, good, we got him down in one shot. Now, as soon as you do that, you have 10 seconds to move 35 kilometers away. So we're back in battle, and the countdown is still on. So let's see if I can You see, right now you can see he's in 3-shot mode. Ammo is always something to keep an eye on, but I want to drop this guy. I'm going to use 6 bullets here. Good. Dropped him. All right, let's see. We could... sight is blocked. Let's take a shot there. Nice shot. This guy is... I don't want to shoot him. I got to be careful of friendly fire too. Missed. So this person, I'm going to move this person into cover. Him and his pet goat. That's the goat who I showed you in the beginning. Now this guy's going to blow himself up. He's a real problem. If he blows himself up, if you're anywhere in this vicinity here, he'll actually not only damage you, but he'll blow the clothes right off your back. You'll just be standing there in your underwear. Good.
Stop the countdown. Stop the countdown.
So now, mid-combat, another option is coming up here.
He has sent me to speak to
It's this guy right here. The camera's a little off.
Please return to your duty.
I will not allow this peaceful canyon to be destroyed by the stubbornness of a few childish cowboys. That is not the purpose.
So he's giving you another choice, right? Which is, okay, you really want to keep fighting? And if you choose death, it's a 2-hour battle. You're going to have to fight this canyon, and it is tough, but it's absolutely possible. Or you could say, let me arrest you. I got a proposition for you. So I'm going to choose arrest.
Very wise. Then come with me to be nestled in the bosom of...
It cuts it off right there. So now we're in jail. So now we have yet another set of options here, which is he says, okay, are you willing to go do a job for me? If you are, I'll let you out of jail, I'll give you your stuff, and go do this thing, off you go. And you have a quest that you wouldn't have had if you hadn't gone through that whole process. Or you can say, no, I'm not willing to go on it, in which case it then goes down another track, which he says is fine, sit in the jail and rot. And then you got to find your way out of the jail, get your stuff, and fight your way back out of the temple. So those are all, that's an example of, you can see of all the ways it can branch just based upon one little kind of simple set of rules. So we're locked in jail. Let me show you one other area here. So this is the LA part of the game. So you'll see LA looks like this. It's very green, and you've spent 25 or 30 hours in Arizona, and now which by the way, normally like that would be a big enough game these days, especially as gameplay has come down over time. But we're like, nope, 25, 30 hours is enough. We want this thing's got to be big to go for. We added a whole. It's like we put the sequel rolled into the first one. Okay, so and LA is completely different, right? Which is visually it's different. Nobody knows who the Rangers are. You're just a bunch of weird people with cowboy hats over there. And there's cults. There's 3 different cults that are all broadcasting propaganda all the time. Even the gameplay patterns are different. So anyway, this is one of the first things you stumble across. This guy's singing. Now, we could jump in at any point and stop this, right? It isn't like a game where we say, do you want to help? Yes or no? You make the call. Of course, you don't know what's going on. If we were to jump in and attack these guys, it'd be a tough battle, but it's winnable. Then this group are the pistol-packing priests. They are now our enemy. So now you've, again, kind of turned off a whole way of playing the game that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. And then they just walk off like, no big deal, like you're not even there. So it's just a very disturbing scene. Imagine playing the game, you get here and you have no idea what you're supposed to be doing. So, and of course, by not saving them, the people are like, yeah, you guys are real heroes, thanks a lot. And the thing is, the radio to me is like a huge part of the game. Like it really adds the atmosphere of it because you have people broadcasting in different languages. You have weird Cold War stuff coming. Like everything isn't point on. Like I don't like where like every single thing I hear or read in the game is exactly to moving the story forward. I like to just fill out the world or make you figure out what's meaningful. And in this, like with this cult, I love because, you know, they're obviously not nice guys, but you know everybody has their own ideology. So you know, I love the way of kind of masking like violent history is what better way to do it than with a children's choir. So we hired a real children's choir to record all of their really dark music, but when you hear it now, it sounds so cute and innocent.